You're welcome back. We're now joined by Nick Agule, a public affairs analyst, and we'll be looking at two incidences that has happened almost at the same time. First of all is that NLC flouted the order of the court and went ahead with the strike, which started yesterday and is still ongoing. We haven't heard anything as at this time what is happening. If it has happened, we have not heard it. And also the SDP candidate in Kogi Guba election says he will not waste time going to court as he trusts neither INEC nor the courts. The courts again are not trusted, and NLC says to hell with the courts, we're going on strike again. And a lot of people are feeling that is an indictment on the court. So first of all, let me welcome Nick Agule to the program. Good morning and welcome, Nick.
Good morning, and good morning to our viewers.
Okay, like I have said in this introduction, NLC went ahead with the strike. So many people do not want to go to court because they don't trust the court at all. The last hope of the common man is not being trusted anymore. We go to Bayelsa State. The sitting governor won, and the other parties were complaining that they did not like the outcome of the election. And he said, according to what the report said, go to court too. So it means if you want, go to court too. There's so much confidence that people have when they do the kind of things that they do, knowing that they may not have the courts that will stand up for the truth. Would like to hear your comments on this comment of the SDP candidate and the fact that NLC has flouted the order of the court. What do you assess the courts in Nigeria as being?
Thank you very much for that question. The judiciary in Nigeria needs to look at themselves and ask themselves if they are living up to the billing that they are the last hope for the common man. The three arms of government in Nigeria, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, are all not doing well by my own assessment. We already know the executive troubles and we know the legislature, but we had hoped that the judiciary will be different, and indeed they were different. We had a judiciary that delivered courageous judgments in the past, but something has happened along the way that has now made majority of Nigerians, and I'm one of them, to lose confidence in our judiciary. And this should be worrying. This should be worrying because not only are we Nigerians no longer having a place where we can run to for protection and for getting back our rights that we think have been violated, the so-called foreign investors that our president and governors and all other political leaders are junketing around the world in the name of attracting, they are not going to come. Who wants to come to a jurisdiction where the judiciary has so many questions to answer? They have so many inconsistencies hanging on their necks. They have judgments that they themselves are unable to explain. No investor wants to come to a situation like that, because it then means that if you bring in your money and then there is a dispute and you now go to court, that you're not going to get justice. And not only that you're not going to get justice, it is justice delayed for most of the times. And as they say, justice delayed is justice denied. So we have a judiciary that needs reform. We need a judiciary that, I don't know how we are going to start it. Is it going to be the judges themselves? Is it going to be retired chief justices and justices of Nigeria? How do we get our judiciary back. Because I personally, in my view, and I believe I'm speaking the minds of majority of Nigerians, is that we have lost confidence in our judiciary. And that is why people are bold enough to tell you to go to court, because they believe that if you go to court, you're not going to be able to get justice from this judiciary that we have now. And it's a worry, it's a point of concern. It actually does damage to us, our brand as Nigeria, because I mean we are no longer the beautiful bride that we expect to be to attract those foreign investors.
But right now, the president is going about trying to woo these investors. And from what you're saying, it is not only going to affect the common man in Nigeria, but the people, the prospective investors are likely to run away from that. It's really worrisome. But what?
Exactly, because we live in an information age now. And everything that is happening in any village, anywhere in the world is known globally. I mean, it's not like in the days where we didn't have this kind of communication, we didn't have this kind of internet technology, and people needed to pay people. Like an investor wanted to come to Nigeria, they needed to pay someone to research about Nigeria, to try and find out news about Nigeria. No. Now, as I'm speaking to you now, people are watching us all over the world. They only just need internet access. They are watching us. So the information is out there. And Nigeria needs to know that some of these shenanigans that we actually carry out here in Nigeria, that the whole world is knowing about them, and is doing damage to our brand. This is the very important thing that has to be put into mind at any time as we do these things.
But what exactly was the problem, or is the problem, that has made the judiciary to lose its bite?
I think I will point to corruption as one of the biggest problems of the judiciary. You know, like I said, we have three arms of government. The executive government, the executive arm of government is the one that has all the money and has the power. It's actually the executive arm of government that controls the budget, from which even the judiciary are able to take their own money. And over time, the people in the executive arm of government were the ones that were eating the money. And the National Assembly or the legislatures, both national and state, decided that they will also join the party. And they too started to take money corruptly. And the judiciary were the ones that were left there. You know, mostly the judges were not having good conditions of pay. You know, sometimes they didn't even have good offices, they didn't have equipment to work with, and all of that. And along the way, especially with the political cases, the judiciary started being influenced by the big monies that were being taken by the executive arm of government. Because the executive arm of government people, be they the president, the governors, that needed to win electoral cases. And that meant that they had the money, which they ill-gotten money, and they started to influence the judiciary with this money. And the judiciary, given the poor condition of service and poor work environment and all of that, along the way couldn't withstand the temptation coming from these people, these politicians. And they exposed themselves and got sucked into this. And from there, the thing is just degenerating every day. So you see, that has now led us to have a judiciary that is no longer a judiciary that we think is delivering justice, but a judiciary that is delivering judgments according to who has the bigger budget to pay them. And it is very worrying, and it's saddening that we have come to this point.
So when we're talking about reforms, are we looking at increasing their pay? Will that solve it? Because they will have more money in their coffers or something. Or what else do you suggest can be a good reform for the judiciary?
The reform has to come at various levels. The reform first has to start from the appointment of judicial officers. Who are the candidates that we are appointing into the various courts in the hierarchy of the judiciary in Nigeria? In the recent past, we have had, complaints of candidates being appointed, like the current Chief Justice of Nigeria. It's been alleged that he appointed his own son as a judge, and appointment as a judge now is becoming like an inheritance. If your father or mother was or is a judge, a senior judge in Nigeria, then you are likely now going to be appointed as a judicial officer yourself. So that process has to be reformed. We need to appoint judges based on competence and based on character and based on the courage that they have exhibited in the past. If you appoint people based on some sort of patrimony, and that means the appointment is not on merit. And if it's not on merit, that candidate is not going to give you exactly what you were looking for. So appointment is the first place where the reform has to start. And then the reform has to go over to the budget, the source of money. I know President Yaradua, I don't know if it was true, it wasn't a constitutional amendment or whatever, but he allowed the judiciary, he made the judiciary to have a direct allocation from the federation account without having to wait on the executive arm of government to give them the money. That is something we need to do as well, to say the budget for the judiciary should be independent of the control of the executive arm of government. Because you see, if you are giving somebody money, you are most likely going to control that person. So we have to do that. Whether it is by constitutional amendment, that has to be done. And then the appointment of the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the Chief Judges of the state. Currently, it is the governor that appoints the Chief Justice of the state, and the president appoints the Chief Justice of Nigeria. And such appointments are confirmed by the National Judicial Commission, the NJC. That has to change. If you appoint somebody, then that person is most likely going to have loyalty to you. The executive arm of government is an independent arm of government from the judicial arm of government. As you can see now, the executive arm of government does not appoint the legislative arm of government. The legislative arm of government is elected by the people, but the judicial arm of government is appointed by another arm of government. That's an anomaly. So we have to have a situation where judges, including the chief justices, are appointed independent of the executive arm of government. They should be appointed independent of the executive arm of government. And then when they are appointed, we now come to their welfare, like you already mentioned. They should be paid well. They should have the best offices around. They should have the equipment to support them. They should have the staff to support them, and then they should have very good retirement packages. And I know that there are a lot of judges that if they are being paid well, they don't have to beg anybody. Their future is assured. They know that even when they retire, they will be well looked after with a fantastic pension package and all of that. That they will resist the overtures that are being made to them by corrupt senior advocates of Nigeria acting on behalf of politicians to induce them to deliver the wrong judgment. So the reform has to be on various levels.
So who should carry out this? Who should be at the vanguard of leading this fight for the reform of the judiciary? Is it the judiciary itself? Is it the people, or who?
I think there needs to be all hands on deck. for the reform of the judiciary. The judiciary itself, like I said, they have to look at themselves and feel shame that the judicial arm of government that globally is touted to be the last hope of the common man has become for the highest bidder in Nigeria. It is shameful for me. If I were a judge in Nigeria, I would feel shame wearing my gown and calling myself a judge because of the way the image of the judiciary in Nigeria has been thrown into the mud. So the reform must start with themselves. Then I expect the judiciary to call themselves into a room and say, guys, I think we have derailed. We need to retrace our steps and get back on the right path. So the reform has to start with them. And the reform has also needs to begin at the National Assembly. There are pieces of legislation that needs to be enacted. Like I talked about, having a direct allocation independent of any arm of government to the federation account, having judicial officers being appointed without the influence of the executive arm of government. All those are pieces of legislation that needs to come in. And then the people, like you rightly said, also have a role to play. You see, democracy has four arms. You have the executive arm, the legislative arm, the judicial arm, and the people arm. In Nigeria, the people arm has been docile, has been sleeping, is ready to take anything that is thrown at them. They are not fighting for democracy. They are not putting anybody's feet to fire. And I say, look, if it is democracy, you will never enjoy it in such state of docility. Go to anywhere, like here in the UK, I'm speaking to you now. If you go to Parliament Square, as I speak now, the people are out there in their hundreds, marching, demanding one thing or the other from Parliament. Members of Parliament are receiving emails, letters, phone calls from the people. You know, even the media, you know, I see media in Nigeria sometimes, they put these politicians on what is supposed to be the hot seat. Politicians will just be talking somehow. And you can see that the media are not drilling them. They are not grilling them. They are not pushing them to the wall. You know, just giving them a free and soft landing space for them to be talking the kind of things they are talking. Every hand must be on board in terms of the people's side to force the hands of the politicians to deliver good governance to them. You see, because that is what happened elsewhere. Joe Biden today, Rishi Sunak here, you know, Rishi Sunak, he just recently did cabinet reshuffle. And the reason he did that cabinet reshuffle was the people were pushing and saying, oh, your home secretary was talking this and that. They check the mood of the people. And once they see the mood of the people is changing, they begin to make adjustments because they know the people can remove them from power. Nigerian people need to upgrade their game. We just sit and take everything, you know, and we expect that we're going to see good governance. We're not going to see good governance if it's democracy.
Okay, before we wrap up, just a little digression. You followed closely the off-season election that was held in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa State. What is your assessment as we wrap up?
My assessment is that INEC seems not to have learned anything. Even the apologies that INEC gave us after the general elections seems to have been fake. You know, election in Nigeria shouldn't be a tug of war. I saw one of the candidates in Kogi election. He was showing a results sheet where INEC is mutilating result sheet, where INEC is recording votes that are more than the Beavers accredited votes. And still, INEC said, oh, we are investigating some things in Kogi State, for instance, in some local government, or the 5 local governments or so. The same INEC is declaring a result. You know, election has become like war in Nigeria, and it shouldn't be. Election should be a civil activity where citizens on a normal day like today can go and vote. And that is why we are also saying that there has to be electoral reforms. And the 10th National Assembly needs to get on with the job immediately to reform the electoral process. For instance, the off-cycle governors, by January, they will be inaugurated, they will be sworn in. And that will be like 2 months from now they will be sworn in, and the courts grant up to 8 months for the judicial process to run. So that means the man is in office while he's fighting to be in office. So why did INEC wait till November to conduct this election? Why didn't INEC conduct this election back in May, so that by now the courts would have already exhausted the judicial challenge to the election, so that the people who will be sworn in January are the ones that have actually been voted into office by the people and affirmed by the courts, so that people don't come into office, they now have access to the money of the state or of the country, and they are using it to prosecute their electoral victories in court while they are in office. And if this thing that I'm saying now is not taken seriously by the National Assembly, we risk having a presidential election in Nigeria as an off-cycle election. How do I mean? If any time a presidential election is taken by the court and given to another candidate, a victor at the presidential election is dislodged by the court and given to another candidate, the presidential election in Nigeria will become an off-season election. So just imagine that as Nigeria, we are going to the general election, but we are not electing our president because our president election is going to come later. So this is the kind of thing that has to happen, that the 10th National Assembly must get their act together, and they will have to start now to begin that constitutional amendment process, the Electoral Act amendment process, to take all these reforms on board. There's the other one I was hearing that they say, and that was the situation that happened in Bayelsa State. The electoral law says if there is crisis at a polling unit, that the election in that polling unit is cancelled and the result will not be declared. That is an open goalpost for politicians, because if I am in an election with somebody and I know that the person's stronghold is in this local government, I can go and initiate crisis in those polling units, in those local governments, because I know INEC will just simply cancel the election and declare no result in my opponent's stronghold. So something like that needs reform. Okay. If there is crisis in a polling unit, INEC should cancel the election, correct, but INEC should now call on the Inspector General of Police to provide additional security so that you go back and hold that election. The election must be held. You cannot just say, because there is crisis, I'm canceling the election. That means you just send people to go and foment crisis in your opponent's stronghold. Okay. And these are the things that will make elections in Nigeria better.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Agule, for coming on the program today. As usual, it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day to all.
You too. Okay. We've been talking with Nick Agule, Public Affairs Analyst. We're talking about the judiciary. Is it not an indictment that the NLC is still carrying out their strike? And also, some candidates are saying if they go to the courts, it's a waste of time because they're already sure that they will not get good judgment. Well, that's how we're going to wrap up the show this morning. We hope that you had a wonderful time, and we hope to see you tomorrow again. Until then, my name is Nyamgul Agaji. Have a wonderful day.